He's a 6-time Pro Bowler, and since retiring from the National Football League, all he has done is put together an incredibly popular show and podcast called I Am Athlete, and you could catch it on the I Am Athlete YouTube page at IamAthleteTV.com, which is the website associated with it as well. And he's got Antonio Brown coming up on Monday, and we figured let's talk playoffs and his show with Brandon Marshall. How have you been, Brandon Marshall?
I am awesome. I love you and I miss you.
Right back
but
at you.
Before we go to Antonio Brown and all the other stuff,
Yes,
I want to talk about what you just said.
What I do?
How about you covered all of us, a lot of us, from college to retirement, post-career. You're like, I'm getting old.
Yes.
You know?
I am.
Listen, that should be I didn't feel the positivity in that. Right? Like, I'm reading this book right now. I actually just cracked it open last night. I'm in Cabo. It's called Halftime by Bob Buford. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about how you go from moving from success to significance. And it talks about halftime. Okay, now we're in this transition. And in the second half of our life, this is when we can get even more creative and have more success, but in a significant way. I think you need to check it out.
Well, Brandon, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you saying that. And I always, one of the many reasons why I love talking to you is your thoughtfulness and your brain, man. And the only difference, though, is I've lost all my hair. Your hair looks great. You know what I mean? Like, you got to understand where I'm coming from here. All right? I'm also a neurotic Jewish person. You know, you played in New York. You were around a lot of us. You know, I mean, I don't know if there's anything in halftime about that. Is there anything, you know?
No, nothing in halftime about that.
Oh,
You're
man.
freaking Rich Eisen, man. I miss you, buddy.
Right back at you. All right. I always shoot you straight, sir. After Antonio Brown said what he said about Tom Brady and said what he said after strip sacking himself, I came on this show. I said, I am done with him. I'm done talking about him. I think he needs help, and people need to get him some help. That's what I said. And you know I don't throw those words around lightly at all, okay? You know I wore a green tie because you helped me one year in my 40-yard dash in honor of your movement and your work for mental health awareness. So I don't throw those words around lightly. But when I heard you interviewed him, I'm like, okay, I'll bite on this. So why did you interview him? Why do you want to talk to him?
Yeah. Well, first, I think that we're curious. They're not the only ones. I want to validate that. You know, I have some friends that text me and they're like, "Why are you sitting down with him? You know, he needs help. You know, people keep enabling him." And so for me, I'm curious. I'm curious to have this conversation in a locker room setting, and that's pretty much what we've created at I Am Athlete, is just that locker room talk.
Yes.
In the locker room, you have people from different walks of life, have different points of views, right? And we have, you know, discussions on a wide range of topics. And so it's a special thing that happens in a locker room where we're able to, you know, hold guys accountable because you're a part of this locker room, this fraternity. In the locker room, we're able to get into intense conversations and discussions and still hug at the end of it, right? Because we have a common goal, and that's to win a championship. So you learn these interesting things in the locker room, and we're able to have discussions with each other that we can't even have with our wives, our children, our moms and dads, right? It's just a special bond. So I was curious to see how he responded in that locker room setting. And I mean, it was a complex. I'll be honest with you, it was a complex conversation. It was a difficult conversation. Hell, there was one part of the conversation, Rich, where I was like, I feel like you're interviewing me now, and that's not the job. Like, can I do my job the second half of my career? It was really complex.
Right, and as somebody who interviews people for a living, as I have for as long as I had, normally that's the sign of somebody who wants to avoid answering questions, to be honest with you, man.
Right.
Like that's somebody who's just like, okay, you know, I understand that, you know, this may be difficult, but you're the one who agreed to sit down. And you know, so you asked him at one point if you think he has a mental health problem, and he said no. Do you having chatted with him, would you agree with that assessment?
Here's what I would say, just being a high-profile athlete playing in the NFL for 13 years.
Yes.
I would say that, when there's a consistent behavior or a pattern, I would say, I think that there should be a time, in your journey when you sit down and you ask questions, you be curious, you look yourself in the mirror, and potentially go sit down with someone and see what is going on with me. Mm-hmm. And if there's nothing going on with you, I still think that you should sit down and talk to someone, because there's so much pressure. You're in a $16 billion business. You have multi-million-dollar athletes. You have people pulling on you every single day. You can get cut any moment. You could be booed in front of the world any moment or cheered. There's a lot that you have to deal with at the age of 22, 24, 30, 32 years of age. And so I think that whether it's an impairment or a performance issue, I think you should be talking to someone. So if for me, as a brother, I would say I would grab Antonio Brown's hand and say, let's just sit down with someone and see, how we could potentially, navigate through these situations, a little bit better, right?
Yes.
But to be honest with you, that's what he said. You saw it. You saw the snippet. There's nothing wrong with me. His thinking is this. It's like, okay, Brandon, where I come from, this is how we respond, right? I'm not a passive-aggressive person. Bruce Arians, who's now back in the media, hitting at player Adams, who I played with, safety in the head, looked at Antonio Brown and said, get the F out of here and get the little throat slashing thing, like, you're done, right? And so for him, he said, the only thing I'm thinking about in that situation is this person said he didn't want me here, so I'm leaving right now. I don't want to wear your logos. So there's rationale behind his thinking, right? And so, he has a lot of answers for certain situations that he's been in.
No, I understand that. I got Brandon Marshall here on the Rich Eisen Show, and that hey man, are you saying he's not seeing a therapist? Like and I say this, sharing with you and everyone here. I have a weekly session myself. I'm a 52-year-old father of 3, a husband, a son, lost a dad. There's so much going on, and I'm talking to one in 2 hours from now for a weekly session. He's not speaking to anybody, Brandon?
Right.
Is he not? Because that's somebody's got to, again, look, and part of this too, again, and when you interview him, I don't mean that you own everything that he says, okay? But, to me, that part of his post, reaction to everything, okay, is to try and get more famous, it seems like. Is that wrong? Is that a wrong thing? Because the video that I see everywhere is him hanging with Madonna and Kanye, and that got millions of views. Is this something that he wants?
Right. Well, yeah, to answer your first question, right, like what I took from the interview, one, he's a confident guy, seems to be strong, and I don't think he's talking to anyone.
Wow.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that you talk to someone weekly. I still talk to someone weekly.
Oh, sure.
Sometimes now I'm shifting in this transition second half of my career. Sometimes it's twice a week, because there's a lot of pressure when it comes to business and entrepreneur, being in the media, a husband, a father. There's so much that happens, right?
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think he should be talking to someone. And whether he's dealing with impairment issues, walking around with a diagnosis, or just performance. And that is fair. It's fair, yes. Antonio Brown, this is deeper conversation, right? Like, athletes, the challenge is when you are an athlete in a team sport, team comes first. But now, over the last 6 years, even going back to when he was in Pittsburgh, remember, he was going to practice with cameras. He was flying in on helicopters, pulling in drop-top 1940 Rolls-Royce cars. Yeah. It was always a show for Antonio Brown, which was being deviant behavior back then, right? So Antonio Brown has always been one that said, you know what, I understand team, but I'm coming here to do my job, and at the same time I'm going to put on a show, and I'm also going to build up my brand and tell my story the way I want to tell my story. So absolutely, he said it in his first podcast. He said it, I think the MetLife incident where he came out and he said, look, that song was already produced. I did that song 2 years ago. But then there was a moment, all eyes on me. Now we're talking about algorithm, right? Like, it's hard for some people like us, right? We're learning. We're on social, but we're still not as good as the generation behind us. Like, look, it was a perfect time to drop my song, and he sees it as a moment. He sees that this could be he's not playing around with entertainment. Antonio Brown really is embracing being a rapper. So, I know it's hard for a lot of us to understand and gather because, that's Antonio Brown, the Hall of Fame wide receiver. That's the guy that had seven Pro Bowls, went to 7 Pro Bowls. What is he doing rapping? What is he doing sitting down with Madonna after you leave MetLife Stadium? What we're supposed to do is you're supposed to quiet, don't say anything, right? That's what we're used to seeing in these moments, and we're not right now.
Brandon Marshall here on the Rich Eisen Show. Before I let you go on your rest of your Friday, again, this Antonio Brown interview is going to air on the I Am Athlete YouTube page on Monday. You got thoughts on who makes the Super Bowl? 2 cents on that one?
Ooh.
Switching gears?
Ooh, Super Bowl.
Yes, sir.
Man, listen, I forget. I feel like I'm like Michael Irvin, your buddy. Like, I feel like he changes his picks throughout the year all the time. I changed my picks a few times. Yeah, right?
That's
Come
okay.
on, Mike.
It's your prerogative.
Yeah, right? So I don't know who I picked at the beginning of the year, who I picked halfway through the year and 3 weeks ago right now. I'm a big fan of Buffalo. I've been on them for 2 years, fighting with Nick Wright about Josh Allen, how awesome he is. Mm-hmm. So I think they can get it done. That defense has to stand up against Patrick Mahomes. They didn't play smart enough, meaning more – I don't want to dive. I don't think we have time for me to dive deep into football, right? Dang. All right. So I like Buffalo, and then on the NFC side, Tom Brady's great, man, but I don't know. Aaron Rodgers won Super Bowl. The Green Bay Packers have wasted the Aaron Rodgers era for sure. We're talking about the last dance. Like, if this is the last dance, then they have to go out with a Super Bowl victory.
That's true.
They have to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. So I'm going with Buffalo, and I'm going with Green Bay, the last dance. I'm not a huge fan of everything Aaron Rodgers does, but there's something special about what's going on in that locker right now, them versus the organization.
Well, Brandon, appreciate the time. Congrats on what you've done post-career. You mentioned Nick Wright, obviously, first things first, and then I Am Athlete YouTube page, everything that you're doing. I'm thrilled to see it. And then, as you know, with the Combine coming up and my run after that, how do I get on I Am Athlete? How do I get booked on I Am Athlete, Brandon? Because
when we launch I Am Athlete LA, I would love to come out there and sit down with you with Swaggy P, Keenan Beasley, Brandon Jennings, our guys.
Yeah, right.
So I would love to have you sit down with us.
Because you've seen it. You've seen it.
Last, 7 years? It's been like 7 years.
Yeah,
we've been doing
you've seen it first. More than that, you've seen it firsthand, Brandon. That I Am Athlete. You've seen it in your own 2 eyes.
Drop that video again.
Yes, sir.
You got to drop that video again.
Yeah, you taught me. The one thing that I definitely picked up from you, because you know how to speak and get through to people, was the idea of make sure that your fingers, you don't ball your hands up when you run, and you need to take, it's like eating potato chips. Yep. So you said it was like holding a potato chip in your hand and eating it. I totally got the concept. Everything else went way over my head. So, thanks for the call, Brandon. You be well.
Let's do it.
You're the best. You take care. That at B Marshall.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. That's Brandon Marshall, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon Marshall, Twitter and Instagram at B Marshall. That I Am Athlete page, millions of people are watching. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.